Do you remember what we were gonna talk about?
Yes, I'd essentially asked, made a point of saying, let me just find the tweet. Fuck it, and I'll just
I've got it up here. You can find it, but I'll read it really quick. I'll read your tweet while you're finding
hit
it.
me.
All right. I have yet to hear a single coherent argument against left-wing cultural dominance that isn't just anti-racism, anti-feminism, and anti-accountability. Actually, parentheses, actually suffering consequences for the things you say and do. If I'm just missing something, please enlighten me. And you're quote tweeting Mr. Chris Kavanaugh, a mutual of mine who seems like a good guy. I've listened to his podcast. He's retweeted some articles from me. And what he said is, there's a real swivel-eyed myopia developing on the anti-SJW side. Take Bari Weiss's new article. Some has the scare asterisks on it. Some reasonable centrism about wokeism, but also claims that unlike Trump, the left has captured the most powerful institutions. What about the Senate, the presidency, and the Supreme Court?
Yeah. It's because every single one of these folks, their apocalyptic way of discussing any like they equate their work being reject, dismissed, or silenced, quote unquote, as evidence of left-wing cultural dominance, which inherently is wrong per these folks. So, or rather, inherently, implicitly is wrong, and so any criticism of them isn't legit, isn't genuine, and that's what I've noticed is the trend with them. That's what it all amounts to be. I'm like, as it goes back to the accountability thing, these folks cannot stand in the slightest that their ideals don't hold up to scrutiny, and so they just blame it on left-wing cultural dominance.
So like this was something that wasn't completely clear to me at the time. I think I know the answer now, but just because it wasn't completely clear to me initially. When you say those folks, you're not talking about Chris Kavanaugh. You're talking about
no Chris Kavanaugh. Chris Kavanaugh is like my worst critique of Chris Kavanaugh is that they may be a little too generous to these types of folks. You know, the anti-justice, anti-critical race theories, just those the Bari Weisses, the Peter Boghossians, the fucking James Lindsays, and all that. So that's my only critique, and that's not even by much. I'm not referring to Chris Kavanaugh. He's good people.
Right. I was a little unclear on that initially, but like in retrospect, it's very obvious to me who you were talking about and who you were criticizing. And when you say left-wing cultural dominance, what do you mean by that?
So it was feminism. You know what I mean? Anti-racism. Let's see what else here. Pretty pro-LGBT, including I would say non-conforming genders and whatnot, and trans people. Like it's just seen as is acceptable, regardless if anybody is a good or bad trans person. Where you know what I mean? It's stuff like that. Oh, and secularism too.
Sure. Yeah. So like, could you think of like an example of like a recent example of left-wing cultural dominance, like running afoul of people like Bari Weiss?
Left-wing cultural dominance running afoul of people. Well, given that her whole fucking thing is being like an anti-racist kind of contrarian type. I don't even want to say that because like her ideals not holding up to scrutiny isn't just a left-wing phenomenon. Like even people who aren't like explicitly leftist, which is I would say most of the people at the New York Times by and large and all that, they soundly reject her. You know what I mean? Like she's kind of full of shit a lot, and that's not really a partisan thing. So I wouldn't even call that left-wing cultural dominance. She calls it left-wing cultural dominance.
Yeah, I'm not. I truthfully, I'm not sure if the prevailing culture at the New York Times is left wing or not. I don't know. I mean,
right?
Like she has alleged that there's this like cultural shift going on there, I mean, certainly she can point to some examples of a cultural shift, but I'm a little unclear on how prevalent it is. Like I read her resignation letter from the New York Times. I thought she raised some good points in it. I also thought she made some claims I thought were a little suspect, or at the very least, I would have liked to have learned more about. It's hard to have an opinion on it without seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, I'd have to re-review all of that. It's been I have the general gist in my mind, but I'd have to reread all of that again for the specifics because that was
She
however the fuck
posits
long ago.
she posits almost like a coup by Slack channel. Like, yeah, I mean, there's these
Yeah, I remember that.
radicals waiting, lurking in the Slack channel, waiting to carry out their cultural revolution. It's a very strange picture. So when I knew we were gonna like sit down and talk about this, so I figured I'd have to read the article that Chris is excerpting from Bari Weiss. Did you read it at all?
Fuck. I'm gonna have to read it again. Am I being honest with you?
It's called Stop Being Shocked, and it is in Tablet Magazine by Miss Bari Weiss. And I hadn't read it until like 15. I still haven't finished it. I started reading it like 30 or 15 minutes ago, and then got distracted or something. But it's so I guess I think she used to write for Tablet before. I guess she's back at Tablet, and I don't know how much of this you read, but it's something. It's quite the article.
I imagine it is apocalyptic. It is this, oh no, the left is taking over everything. You're all going to be silenced and censored, and no different ideals will be able to exist, and blah 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 blah.
It's entirely culturally insular. Like what I mean by that is, so it begins by talking about this memorial for the assassinated former Prime Minister of Israel. I think his name is Yitzhak Rabin, which I had not heard of this. Apparently, there was a brouhaha where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was going to speak at this, and then pulled out, and it caused a storm. I had not heard anything about this controversy, and it just goes. It just gets more and more obscure from there. She just rattles off like a litany of like cultural grievances against like Jews that I just had not heard one word about any of them. Apparently, the Biden campaign scolded Linda Sarsour and then apologized for scolding her, and this is one of her grievances. I haven't heard one word about any of this. It strikes me as like a hopelessly like culturally niche. There's one part that summarized the whole thing, where this is what she says. I'm going to read her sentence to you verbatim. Do you know that Brarely is now asking families to write statements demonstrating their commitment to anti-racism? And I read that and I'm like, is Brarely someone she mentioned before? Is this a person?
Yeah. Are we all supposed to know what a Brarely is?
I did a search. The word Brarely is not used one time before or after this. She threw this at Brarely, threw it out sans context.
So it's a bunch of different things that don't even thread together. A bunch of different thoughts of specific cultural grievances, very niche cultural grievances.
It's extraordinarily
that she just kind of throws all together.
It's extraordinarily niche. Brarely is a all-girls parochial school in New York City. So that gives you an idea of how narrow the cultural niche she is focused on here. That is something like a controversy at an I'm guessing it's upscale. It's in New York City, upscale girls parochial school in New York City. That is something that has absolutely no meaning to, I'm guessing, upwards of 99% of Americans. This means absolutely nothing. She doesn't even mention it's a school. She just presumes that Brarely, of course.
Of course, Brarely. Holy shit, Brarely.
I'm sending my daughter to Brarely next season. My word, what's this? I haven't heard about this activity at Brarely.
Yeah, what? Yeah. She. I mean, that's what I'm saying is, and that's a trend with all from the fucking Ben Weingart to the Peter Boghossians to the James
Wait.
Lindsays.
Do you mean Bo Weingart, who's like a guy at
Bo Weingart? Yeah, sorry, Bo
at
Weingart.
Quillette,
Like,
right? He's at Quillette,
yeah,
right?
he's at Quillette now.
Yeah.
They all fucking do this. And I'm like, even like and then I said that positive to everybody. Like, someone give me something. And one of my mutuals is somebody who let me know. He's like, fucking the performative wokeness, you know what I mean, about corporations and politicians, you know, or the shallow appeals to wokeness. I'm like, and I said to him, I know performative wokeness is a thing. We all know that. It's not an argument against any kind of left-wing cultural dominance, but like it is a problem. Like it's a problem we all acknowledge, especially even on the left. Performative wokeness is not good. It does not help, and it is just generally fucking awful.
I think it is true that it's a common point of discussion on the left, but I do think we have a problem addressing it. In my opinion, at least. By the way, is this mutual you're talking about? Is that me? Are you talking about me?
No. I think you'd remember. I think you remember that if you said those specific words at me. But no,
right,
that was somebody else.
I couldn't tell. Okay. Yeah, because I answered that also, and I said that I'd be willing to have a conversation. I did not remember mentioning performative wokeness, though. It didn't really sound like me. This article, which it kind of blows my mind to go from like the New York Times to like to writing like this for Tablet magazine. Like that seems to me like a pretty severe step down.
Right.
The thing she mentions after Brierley is, did you see that Chelsea Handler retweeted a clip of Louis Farrakhan? Like, Jesus. Like she spends. Go on.
No, you do yours first.
She just paragraph after paragraph, just listing these obscure cultural grievances that I have never heard of. The only one I'd heard of is, did you see that Twitter suspended Brett Weinstein's civic organization? Yes, I did. I did see that. I did follow that story.
This sounds like the ramblings of someone who is just terminally online and extremely isolated from like most people, especially anyone critical of her. And it's just not healthy.
I think all of these people like subscribe to like a news service that alerts them to like the latest Linda Sarsour controversy, because I only ever hear about her from this crowd. Like Linda Sarsour is this like incredibly marginal like community activist who has like a penchant for saying like in politic things on Twitter. And like the only time you ever hear about her is when some right-wing person is like offended by
literally I do not see, and I am all over the place on the internet. I do not see a single center to left to far left, not a single motherfucker ever talking about her. But whenever I do hear about her, it's some right-wing dipshit. Oh, the left and Linda Sarsour. I'm like, what the fuck? What did she do this time?
And I feel like Bari Weiss has to pick a lane with it too, because it's like, are you for cancel culture? Are you against cancel culture, or are you mad that Joe Biden hasn't canceled Linda Sarsour? Because like her grievance is literally that they scolded her but then apologized, and this is what she's mad about. Like, and who is Linda Sarsour? Has she committed some crime? No, she said impolitic things on Twitter. That's the controversy over Linda Sarsour. And does she have a major platform for these views? No, she does not. I don't know what her following on Twitter is, but she's not on TV. She doesn't have she certainly doesn't have anywhere near the platform that, for instance, Bari Weiss had at the New York Times.
No, not at all. Not never. Like, that's the thing. Like, Linda Sarsour is also just a very niche fucking political activist. Like, she did at no point has she ever had the platform that in backing even close to what Bari Weiss has enjoyed in her fucking mediocre work. So
and walked away from a platform she's enjoyed and walked away from willingly. Yeah.
That's what I mean. But her the thing she does appeals to that fucking brand of assholes. I swear.
Yeah. There's another part that really like jumps out at me where she switches the tack to Donald Trump, and she says, "I share with the majority of American Jews disgust towards Trump and Trumpism." By the way, the reason she keeps mentioning Jews, Tablet is like a Jewish magazine, so she's like writing to
Okay,
like this, like,
I was wondering about that.
I think she used to write for them before. I've heard of this magazine before. I think it's like a basically like a liberal Zionist publication.
Yeah.
I forget specifically where I'd heard of it, but anyways, so she's specifically talking to this very like specific cultural niche here. "I share with the majority of American Jews disgust towards Trump and Trumpism, which has normalized bigotry and cruelty in ways that have crippled American society." Then she switches topic. So when it's like woke grievances, there's paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of example. When it's Trump, who is president of the United States, no examples. Like, this is like such a crystallization of like this like IDW like way of speaking.
Anti-Trump, anti-racism, is perpetually anti-social justice warrior. Fucking, it's just you end up working your way back to just being and or defending racism, anti-feminism, fucking Trumpist, all these things by proxy of just never speaking of them, but only speaking negatively of the opposition to them.
Yeah, like when it's her grievances with woke people, 20 highly specific examples,
page after page after page of it.
When it's her grievances with the president of the United States, no specifics. Don't ask follow questions. Moving on.
Moving on. Just look. I don't like Trumpism. That's it. Okay, got anything specific? No, but the left though.
It's just a personal preference. Like wokeness is a threat to civilization. Her objections to Trump are merely a personal preference. It's such a tell from that side.
Exactly. Like their complaints with Trump is like always like the most backhanded compliment, but an insult towards everybody else. Like they can never just specifically state anything Trump has done. They can never, ever. He's not a threat to civilization. He's not a threat to the country at all. Like any and all critique of his fitness for office and the danger he poses is all not as big. It's all that to them. They'll either just not say anything like that at all, or they'll just like come out with kind of two-way. Well, everybody says Trump is bad. And I would like what James Lindsay did recently, where he was just like, I will not think what people.
Wait, are you talking about James conceptual James Penis?
Conceptual, yeah, that fucking dipshit. Like recently, did a little terrain. People was like how somebody, one of his fans was like, how do you seriously not like? The Trump is objectively dog shit. Like, how do you not see that? And he's like, I will not let anybody do my thinking for me. It's just like he won't compliment Trump, but you can't insult Trump to him. He will not accept any critique of Trump.
But with Lindsay, it's like so he said that he is he's announced who he's voting for. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
James Lindsay is writing in himself for president in 2020.
Of course he is. Of course
he told this to Dave Rubin, and Dave Rubin got really mad at him.
Why did Dave Rubin get mad at him?
Because you're supposed to say Trump, man. You're supposed to come out in favor of Trump. And truthfully, I have to be honest, I kind of take Dave Rubin's side in this because based on what James Lindsay has said, I don't know why he wouldn't vote for Trump. I have no idea what his actual objection to Trump is. I know what his objection to Biden is. Biden's going to put us all in woke gulags, apparently.
Yeah. James is trying to have it both ways, where he's still trying to be like, look, they're both equally bad, or they're both really bad, so I cannot, in good conscience, vote for either of them. I'd rather write it myself. And but based off of his track record, there is it makes no sense why he wouldn't just vote for Trump, because it's very like after everything he said about Biden and everything, the positive things he said about Trump, it's pretty hard to think of it just like, why wouldn't you vote for Trump? Clearly he's doing you celebrated his anti-equal opportunity and all that jazz shit when he was trying to combat anti-racism in the government. Like you celebrated that, James. So like, I'm confused. Why would you not openly support Trump when he clearly does everything you enjoy, you support?
Do you think the performance is maybe mostly for his benefit at this point?
It's entirely of his benefit. He's a very self-serving son of a bitch. And he's pretty dumb, but he's backed by some very wealthy individuals.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if said wealthy individuals felt confident about openly supporting Trump, he would too. But because
I'm pretty sure they have though. Like these people who are hold on, I want to look up who it is.
Yeah, it's some fucking Christian dominionists, right?
Yeah, I think they're called the Sovereign Society.
Something like that.
Yeah, I can't find it right now, but I mean they sound like extremely vocal Trump supporters. Now maybe that's it. Maybe he doesn't want to want to like anger them, but frankly I don't. I just couldn't see James Lindsay. If James Lindsay came out and supported Biden, I wouldn't get it. Like I would be like, well, like based on
that would
like,
make based on what? You have literally done nothing but speak of Biden in the most apocalyptic terms with regards to the left taking over everything and yada yada yada, the wokes taking over everything, and only positive of Trump because he's fighting the wokes and yada 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 blah blah blah. You know what I mean?
I mean, James is basically a single issue voter, and his single issue is like pushing CRT in like the college classroom, and on the rare occasion when he does speak on a different issue, like for instance, he recently like talked about court packing. He in those cases also backs the Republican.
Everything, probably like for a guy that's not political on everything the Republicans want. He is openly in support of every time, and that like every outcome the Republicans want, he seems to be weirdly 100% in support of it. For guys that's not who marks himself as not political, but again, that's the whole grift, man.
But he's another one of those guys who constantly asserts his liberal cred, and then whenever I push back on it, I get like a bunch of reply guys showing up being like, "What are you talking about? He's a liberal." They used to do it with Dave Rubin. They stopped doing it with Dave Rubin.
Shtick. It's the same shtick.
They used to do it with Tim Pool. They mostly stopped doing it with Tim Pool, and now they're doing it with this. It seems like it's weird to me because as soon as I woke up to what Dave Rubin was doing, and I know when I did that, I woke up to what I never really followed Dave Rubin. He's just a guy who would show up in my YouTube mentions. But it was the day after the 2016 election when Rubin was like, "I'm going to hold Trump's feet to the fire, but I think that it's going to be really great when I have my guest on tomorrow, Ben Shapiro. He's the perfect guest to have on at this time." And I was like, "Oh, so you're just a right winger." And once that clicked, I could see the pattern in other people. Yep. But it seems like there's a lot of people who they just keep getting fooled by the same routine. It's frustrating to me.
Yeah, it's frustrating as shit, but keep going.
I was just going to say it's frustrating to me that they don't inoculate themselves to this, that they don't sort of open their eyes. How do
you not figure out you're falling for the exact same shtick? Well, and the reason they don't, I believe, is because they lack the self-awareness to realize that they are that shtick. They are exactly that. You know what I mean? Where they do everything in their power to earn the title or earn the label of conservative or far right or racist, what have you, but are appalled at you daring to label them as such. And they lack that. They lack that self-awareness. You're just like again with James Lindsay. There was not a single Republican policy that you have not supported, and yet you are appalled at the notion that not just Republican, conservative act that you have not supported, and yet you scoff and are insulted at the idea of you being conservative. Or anyone even calling you conservative. How dare you call me conservative? Yes, I support 100% of everything conservatives say and do, but how dare you?
Once you're like once you're promoting the idea that that gay people are secretly pro pedo, I don't know who the performance is for. You know, it just seems like the cat's out of the bag at that point.
At that point, like, why even keep the game up? Like, who are you fooling? Who is this for?
Yeah.
Who do you think you're fooling?
I guess there's still enough of his audience that clings on to this like liberal label that he's got to like go through the motions a little bit more. You know, it seems like all these guys like Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, James Lindsay, there's this really long tail, you know, like they make the pivot, but there's this really long tail where they kind of have to keep like occasionally like paying lip service to like some sort of identity of being like liberal or on the left. It's really just pathetic to watch. Like who are you like why even if your life choices have led you to this, maybe rethink it. Like, why are you lying to people? Which is the only thing you can call it. It's a lie. They're lying to people.
Yeah, it's a lie, but I'm like, I just don't know like why do they, I just don't see why to keep it going when the cat is so clearly out of the bag though.
Yep. I mean, even Dave Rubin, who's like 99% out of the bag, but like every once in a while he kind of falls back into it where he's like, yeah, I'm just listening to reasonable arguments. I'm not a partisan. Like even he's still like he can't help but keep like a little bit of his tail still in the bag. You know, it's funny to watch on his on an interview he did with Michael Knowles. He like at one point abruptly interjects. So he's on the Blaze. He's being interviewed by this Daily Wire goon. Like the cat.
Michael
Dave,
knows.
We Dave. We all know. But Dave is still feels necessary to be like, yeah, I'm sure later on we'll talk about all the problems on the right, and I'll have a lot to say about that too. Like, why?
Every time, but you never do. I'm like, why do you even keep it up?
I haven't listened to the whole interview. I'm sure that they never return to all the problems on the right. Why even pretend for your far right audience on the Blaze that you're going to talk about that?
All right. Yeah, no, it's fucking wild. I'm like, that the target audience for that can't be that many people, and it can't be that profitable to keep doing it. The act gets stale, but the thing is, the reason the act is stale is because there is nowhere else to go with this shit. There is no way it can be creatively done. There is no iteration of this that's more clever than the last because there's nowhere to go with this. It is just being as dumb as you can possibly be on purpose.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I want to return to Bari Weiss's article.
Yeah, so we circle back to that.
Yeah. Because she goes on to kind of give a definition for what I think you're calling institutional liberalism. She attempts to define. I'm sure you won't like her definition, but I want to.
I'm sure I won't, but lay it on me.
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of long, but we can. We'll break it up.
Go for it.
Okay. At some point, it will have a formal name, one that properly describes its mixture of postmodernism, postcolonialism, identity politics, neo-Marxism, critical race theory, intersectionality.
I'm already fucking tired. God damn it!
I was just gonna say I was running out of breath reading that.
Jesus Christ! I'm just getting hit by every fucking I've heard it all. But keep going. Just keep going. Oh my God.
Intersectionality and the therapeutic mentality. I've never heard that one before. Until then, it is up to each of us to see it plainly. We need to look past the hashtags and slogans and jargon to assess it honestly and explain it to others. So that's the preamble. Oh man. That's the preamble to her definition. I'll say that I like a lot of those words, like they're valid words. The only one that I roll my eyes at is like neo-Marxism. That seems to me like a right-wing buzzword that doesn't actually mean much. But critical race theory is a real thing. Intersectionality is a real thing. Like these aren't made up terms.
Yeah, no, these aren't made up terms, but her application of them is where the problem lies. And
unpack that for us. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so let's say intersectionality. You know what I mean? That seems like a pretty harmless fucking thing and definitely something that anyone who
I myself am a critic of intersectionality, so
I'm all for it. You know what I mean? I don't see much of an issue with it. It's just other than people using it as they try to have it like, oh, I thought you're intersectional. Why don't you accept me? I'm like, no, that's not how that works. You know what I mean? There is a such thing as having standards.
You mean like for instance when the quartering was like, the left says they like black women, but they don't like Candace Owens.
Literally that.
Yes.
Their critique of intersectionality is essentially boils down to, oh, you guys, you say you support it, why don't you support this horrible fucking person who's also an ethnic minority? Yada yada. Well, I guess you guys aren't really as intersectional as you claim to be. No, you fucking dipshit. There's a such thing as standards, and the intersectionality doesn't literally extend to everyone, because no, we don't want people like that around, regardless of what identity you fall under. You know what I mean? That's not hypocritical. It's knowing that it falls back into the paradox of tolerance. You know what I mean? That these people very clearly understand.
Rico, right when you contacted me, I was actually debating the paradox of tolerance with Bailey, actually, which I was saying that I don't particularly like Popper's formulation of it, but that's really another argument for another time. The word that she uses that sort of like everything else is like a word that I'm like familiar with and like have encountered, but then she says therapeutic mentality. What do you think she means by that?
What the safe spaces. She's complaining about safe spaces that essentially places when you say therapeutic, essentially telling what you want to hear. Just a big word. This is my interpretation of her idea of therapeutic. We would say this shit mentality.
Yeah, therapeutic mentality. That's what she says.
Being told what you want to hear is said, and protecting yourself from contradictory or opposing ideals and whatnot. Something along those lines, I imagine.
Yeah, so a lot of this criticism comes from a guy named John Haidt. I think John Haidt. I agree with some of John Haidt's criticisms of like this sort of culture, and he's coined a term. I think he coined it. I'm not sure. I think he coined a term safetyism, and I think that she's speaking to that, which is very similar to what you were saying, actually. But like an ideology that says that like that sort of prioritizes an exaggerated idea of like personal safety. So like an example of like safetyism that like was in the news or in like on Twitter recently was when various people, including Bari Weiss, signed a letter about free speech.
Thing.
Exactly. There was a writer at Vox named Emily Vanderwald, I believe her name is. I might be mispronouncing her last name. I believe it's Emily Vanderwild. So she works with Matt Iglesias, who also signed the letter, and she claimed that that Matt Iglesias signing a letter made her less safe. And I think that's an example of like what she means by like a therapeutic mentality.
Of course, that's what they mean. Well, actually, that leads me to ask you a question. So
yeah, go for it.
The discussion then boils down, because we can talk about Bari Weiss and all these other folks all day, but the question then is, my inquiry was, well, what's your criticisms of these particular things? And let's discuss that. Because like I said, I want to hear something other than what these dipshits have been whinging about. Like, what is like? I would trust you as more of an authority on actually being able to speak on these things honestly and in good faith than any number of them. So
okay. So the criticisms of I want to make sure I say
just saying pick something specific and we can go from there.
Okay, her name is Emily Vanderwerf, and she's a writer at Vox, and I mean I am actually very critical of her use of the word unsafe in that context. It seems to me an attempt to use sort of HR language to sort of shut down a colleague. Because if you tell because here's the thing, Emily Vanderwerf wrote a letter to her employer that said that because her colleague Matt Iglesias signed this letter, she is now unsafe. If you tell your employer that you are less safe, that puts your employer in a position. Because if that's correct, if you're unsafe from, like, let's say, exposed wiring that can start a fire, your employer is obligated to do something about that, right?
Right.
So by doing that, she's putting them in a position where either they decide, okay, this is legitimate and we need to do something about that, i.e., I guess, reprimand Matt Iglesias, or, which I guess is what happened, they decide that Emily Vander Werf is a histrionic personality and is just throwing out these words that don't actually mean anything, in which case I wonder why we're accepting that as a society. Why is it acceptable to go around telling people you're unsafe when there actually isn't a clear and present danger to your safety? So I agree.
Well, how do you know? So that's what I'm saying though. About how do you know that though? Because you know what I mean. She could be representing an actual, genuine threat to her personal well-being and within the workplace, fear of retaliation, or of any sort. You know what I mean? Just working with this person puts me in danger for reasons I have not specified in this letter.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
Well, but hold on. It's not between me and my employer because she released this letter publicly. So she's telling her employer.
But people do stuff like that all the time. They just go into the specific details because, typically that's not, but people can choose to get specific if they want. But, by and large, people just say, I have a problem with this person.
No, I disagree, because when you're contacting your employer who is obligated to be in a position, like, let me ask you this. You're an employer. Someone, one of your employees reaches out to you and says, Rico, my work environment is unsafe. What's your response?
All right. First things first, asking, how, why, what's up?
Exactly. You need to. Your first response is going to be, I need to know the specifics. And if they were like, well, I'm not comfortable saying them, wouldn't you be like, well, why did you tell me then? If you want to do something about this.
Was this a letter to our employer or a letter to the public, like something she just put out in a?
It was a letter to her employer that she also put out on Twitter.
Well, then, yeah, if you're putting a letter to your employer, it's gonna be specific. It's gonna go into the specifics of it, because that would be the person. In which case, yeah, it's a little weird that you say you feel hostile via letter to me, but then you don't specify as to who, what, when, where, and why. Now, I could assume that you only want to speak on the specifics rather than have it in written form. But that's just me being generous at that point. You know what I mean?
But also at that point, why release the letter?
Exactly. Why release the letter?
Yeah. And here's another thing a problem I have. She did discuss there is one specific issue that she discussed that made her feel unsafe, and that is him signing the letter. If that's it, then in my opinion, this is a bullshit complaint. Him signing a letter about free speech, it does not make you unsafe in any actual way.
Yeah, if that is the whole of the context revolving around that, then yes, absolutely. Yeah. That is if that's the whole of it. If that's really what would made her feel unsafe, then yeah, that's a wee bit ridiculous. But again, I don't know the full details. I don't know everything going on around them and how the workplace is there.
That's all fair, but I think that's a great reason to not involve the public, to not.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, if you're releasing it to the public at that point, I'm like, okay, I don't know why you only reason you do that is for one or two reasons. One, because you feel like your employer won't do anything without public outcry to back you up, or two, you're doing it for attention.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And what was I gonna say?
Yeah, no, that's but I mean, if that is that it. I figured you'd have more than just that particularly very specific instance.
But that instance is an example of what Jonathan Haidt describes as
safetyism.
As safetyism, yeah. The language built around the idea of safety in order to shut people down, even when there's not actually a direct threat to someone's safety. Which in this case, it looks like there wasn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and the thing about that is it really comes down to one's judgment because someone can just say that, but then at that point it's up to you. Don't just take it as a truism, just like this person says they're unsafe, and that's just it. Oh, absolutely, 100%. I will not.
But hold on. In some workplaces, it would be that simple because when you tell your employer that you are unsafe, they're potentially liable in a legal way.
Yeah, in a legal sense, but again, it's on the employer to conduct an internal investigation. Like it is on them to
Right.
determine whether or not, like once the
Right.
whistle has been blown or the alarm has been set, that's on then the employer has to fucking do the work to figure out who, what, when, where, why, and then what to do about it. I personally dealt with stuff like that as having been in charge of people.
Sure. Yeah. And so in our society, saying you're unsafe, it's almost like an incantation, you know, like you're saying special words that have a special meaning in our society that causes people to act. And that's John Haidt's point.
At that point, it sounds like he's more complaining about it as a kind of overcompensation. Because say once upon a time, many of people's concerns with workplace, whether or not they were in a hostile work or not, or work environment or not, was by and large dismissed. And so increased efforts to combat that can easily come off as, or straight up outright be, overcompensating. Whereas before it was the concerns were dismissed, now they are taking it at face value before doing the investigation to determine whether or not the person was being legitimately safe or not.
But I guess so I'm someone who strongly believes in worker protections, but my problem with this application of them is that the idea of worker protections is being turned on not the employer, who those protections are meant to protect us from, but on each other. And I think that that's a pretty dangerous dynamic on the left. That's not something I want to see more of. We need to see more solidarity, in my opinion.
Again, no, that's where it comes down to the person making the right judgment, because anybody has the right to make the claim that they're unsafe, but it again comes down to the judgment of the employer and people in question to determine that. You know what I mean? A lot of folks act, like I said, on straight face value before all the information is available, and that's just universally bad and has happened in all circumstances. It's not good. You know what I mean? That's just something that needs to be worked on. But overall, though, someone being able to make that claim without it being immediately dismissed, it's like, which way do you want it? Do you want them to be immediately dismissed or taken at face value? We obviously don't want either of those. So the logical conclusion here is people need to fucking pause, can do wait for all the information is out, to then act from there.
Yeah. I agree. I want to discuss another prominent example of recent safetyism. I'm trying to. I want to get the words right. Though I'm trying to look for the exact wording so that I want to read it, not just go from memory.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Okay, here it is. So the Tom Cotton New York Times op-ed. I have a lot. Yeah, I have a lot of conflicting thoughts about that. I don't want to get into that now. So in the wake of that, a bunch of New York Times staffers tweeted out the following. Okay, running this puts Black New York Times staff in danger. Right. So J.C. Fortin put that out. Katie Weaver. I don't know what this guy's name is, but he's a staffer. There was Taylor Lawrence, who's like a pretty well-known writer there. So they all tweeted out the same thing. Running this op-ed puts Black New York Times staff in danger. I think that is a pernicious example of safetyism.
Yeah, I would say that's can definitely be at face value be seen as a bit hyperbolic. But again, it's up to the people themselves to determine it. You know what I mean? Because at this point, it's the complaints against safetyism sound more like tone policing, people complaining of stating whether or not they are in danger.
I completely disagree that it's tone policing, because when you say you're unsafe, when you say you're in danger, that's not tone. You're making a claim that goes beyond your own feelings. Like if I say like, oh, Rico made me feel uncomfortable. Okay, well, a lot of times we feel uncomfortable. That's something that we feel sometimes. But if I say I'm in danger or I'm unsafe, that's stronger wording. That's not me. Like I can't say that and be like, well, I just sort of felt that way. Like no. That's stronger wording. You're making a claim that goes beyond your own feelings. If I told my employer, if there was something that happened at work that made me tell my
that's what I'm
employer
saying.
I was
The
unsafe,
thing is,
I would expect them to do something about it. Like there's like the fire escape is blocked, or a coworker threatened me or something. I would very much be expecting them to do something about that.
yeah. But again, it comes down to who are you or I to determine whether or not persons do claims to them being in danger are legitimate or not, if we have no connection to the situation whatsoever.
Well, again, in all of these cases, the people have made their claims public. Like this isn't a
They
private
can, but
correspondence.
they can make it public on speaking broadly. But again, whatever happens between the employers and them happens there. Like they can make a public statement, but again, we don't know what's going down in private.
If journalists are calling for the New York Times, the most important paper in the country, to change their editorial policy on op-ed because someone is unsafe, I think that they need to have pretty specific examples of unsafety. And the
I
thing
mean,
about it is, I'm actually not dismissive of the idea that the journalists at the New York Times are in danger or unsafe, because the fact is, we live in dangerous times.
no
We're all
kidding.
in danger. In fact, these are really dangerous times. I'm sure you feel it. I feel it. I know the people I know feel it.
Yeah, you ain't got
We're
to
in
tell me
dangerous
twice.
times, and I absolutely believe that. And being a journalist isn't a safe job. You're supposed to be challenging the status quo. You're supposed to be challenging the ruling class. The people who, with their hands on the levers of power, are the people you're supposed to be challenging. That's not safe.
No, of course. And again, though, it's I know what I said. I know you're not dismissing. It's dismissing them outright, but whatever happens is between them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's
Well,
whether or not they
but
change your editorial policy or what have you. All that though is all for them to determine and make their own judgments.
the editorial policy for the New York Times is not a personal thing. It's something that does affect the nation at large. I for one, believe that journalism is a really important institution. So if we're going to be changing our editorial standards, that is a matter of public interest, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, but at the same time, this is whether or not it changes between them. The best we can, but how people work on that though is a lot of people like to work the refs, as you see.
Work the
And
refs. Yeah, I know that expression.
yeah, so that's the a fun technique that everyone typically, admittedly, does to some
The
degree.
Republicans and conservatives are masters at working the refs.
Fucking
day long.
They have perfected the art of it. You know what I mean? And so
Mods. Every Republican outrage story is mods.
Yeah, essentially. You know what I mean? And that's what it comes down to, though, is, and I say this to the left, I'm like, look, if y'all want things your way, then y'all got to work the rest too. Like, whether or not a motherfucker agrees with you or not, all that matters is whether or not you get your way.
That's an argument I absolutely agree with. But I guess in this case, I think that they're working the refs in a way that is really kind of potentially damaging to journalism. And keep in mind, like in this New York Times example, the people working the refs are journalists. So if journalists are working the refs to, in my opinion, damage the standards of journalism, I think that that's kind of upside down in a way.
Well, of course. But I'll say unto you then, and to anybody else who sees an issue with that, if you have a problem with that, then you work the refs. Get them to come to the outcome that you want them to. Again, like I said, I am indifferent. I want
wait. Indifferent about what?
Most things, because I realize that ultimately, if you want things your way, in the way that obviously that someone else is gonna impose, then you got to make it happen. And that means you
But
gotta
but,
weigh.
but, but you're not indifferent though. Like I know you. You're a pretty
Yeah, no,
guy.
yeah, I
You're the
had.
opposite. You're the opposite of indifferent because you're constantly like volunteering for things. You did the DNC. You did the
Yeah, I
You're
do all
doing
these things,
polling.
but it's because I have my personal goals in mind, and when I say indifferent, what I mean is I accept that I have no choice but to accept the outcome, uh, accept whatever outcomes happen. Like I said, I don't like that conservatives work the refs on social media all the fucking time and in the mainstream media and all that jazz. But I understand that there's nothing I can do about that unless, well, essentially I beat them at their own game or circumvent the obstacles they put in front of me. You know what I
I
mean?
completely agree with you about that. Like the only way to beat it is to beat them at their own game. I completely
Beat
agree.
them at their own get beat, but it's like that's because I'm like it works.
Yeah.
They're them working the red. Like we can complain all fucking day about how wrong it is and how the outcomes that they're going for are wrong. But ultimately, why should they care? They're getting what they want. Why
Yeah.
should it? Why should it matter? Why should they stop doing what clearly fucking works for them just because we say it's wrong to do?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I'm of the similar belief that it's, and I think I guess indifferent would be a bad word. It's just more I am uh,
Resigned.
resigned to that is that ultimately what you think or feel does not matter if you don't have the power and authority to realize your ideals, to make them material. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You have to make it happen. We can complain all day about them working the rest in a way that we don't like, but you know what I mean. If we have a particular outcome in mind, then we got to play the game.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you're correct that in this case, what I'm actually complaining about is that I think they're working towards an
A
objective
goal.
that
Yeah.
I just don't agree with. I think that
They don't see that. They don't see there's anything
yeah.
wrong with what they're going for. They don't see it as destructive. In fact, they believe it's absolutely going to help journalism and make it better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is part of a larger debate. I'm actually trying to write like an article about it. There's a guy, Wes Lowry, who
Mm-hmm.
is a journalist. He's covered like Ferguson and stuff, and he's
Yeah.
kind of the leader of this movement to sort of reform journalism in this direction, like make it more.
Yeah.
The way I would describe it is more of a tool for activism. And the thing, my problem with that is that I think activism is a good thing that we need to do, but I also think that journalism is something that we need to do. And I think that journalism and activism are not the same thing. Um,
By all
and
means, I think of journalism is an absolute good. Needs to be people out there always speaking truth to power, seeking out
yeah,
the facts and evidence and presenting it to the public, just keeping the public informed. Because that's
yeah,
what we want as an informed public, and it's hard to get that when we have a bunch of partisan barriers in place that hinder, you know, journalists from putting out good information, putting out accurate information. You know what I
yeah.
mean? The information is pertinent to the public.
I want to go off on kind of a tangent about Wes Lowry because I want to explain his argument because I think it's he formulates it pretty well. I disagree with it, but I think he formulates it pretty well. So basically, what he says is that there is no such thing as unbiased or objectivity, and that is absolutely true. I actually defy anyone to meaningfully dispute that idea. There is no view from nowhere. There is no person who is objective. There is no person who is unbiased. He's
Yeah.
absolutely right about that, and he
Uh,
uses that as a wedge to kind of force in a a political ideology into journalism, and I think that's wrong. And what I think is that yes, objectivity is not possible, but what journalism is a series of standards that are dedicated to an objective that is different than political activism.
yeah.
It's dedicated towards a standard of being unbiased and being kind of the best word I can think to describe it is a social mediator.
Yeah.
And this is an idea that Wes Lowry completely rejects. And I think that all societies need that sort of mediator influence because we need to be able to trust the people who give us our news. It can't just be. There's always going to be partisans, but it can't just be partisans. That's my.
Well,
that's my
and I get you. And with that, it goes into the type of people who they will enforce the rules no matter who you are. Period. The uniforms are uniformly upheld regardless of any partisanship, allegiance, yada yada yada, whatever the fuck. The rules are upheld no matter what. And that's what I think about though. Is like if you want that, then you gotta make it happen. Because if you don't make it happen, if all you can do is critique and complain, then ultimately the partisans are going to keep getting what they want because they're not going to hold back on working the refs. They're not going to hold back on doing whatever they got to do to have journalism formed in the way that they believe it should be formed. So it ultimately comes down to because like I said, I'm right there with you. I just I say on to people though is that coming at it from I'll say framing it in a way, I would say that, I say they'll ultimately use the same framing, all opposed to invoke a sense of pending doom, danger, threat to, they say he's pretty.
It's like you keep saying apocalyptic. Yeah,
apocalyptic terms to describe it. You know what I mean? And ultimately, your prosperity is someone else's apocalypse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really well said, actually. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that was very well said. I agree. I'm gonna finish. What's her name? Bari Weiss's. We set up the introduction like forever ago, but I'm just gonna finish this one paragraph. I'll read it to you, okay? And you
sure.
Give me your. Okay. So anyway, she went about introducing this new this new ideology that doesn't have a name. And here's how she defines it. The new creed's premise goes something like this. We are in a war in which the forces of justice and progress are arrayed against the forces of backwardness and oppression. And in this war, the normal rules of the game, due process, political compromise, the presumption of innocence, free speech, even reason itself must be suspended. Indeed, those rules themselves were corrupt to begin with, designed as they were by dead white males in order to uphold their own power. And then one more quote that she has: "The master's tool will never dismantle the master's house."
Oof. Well, they say all I say on to that is that clearly to them, this left-wing cultural dominance or growing left-wing liberalish cultural dominance is the apocalypse. It's the end of free speech and free thought, which to them it's
Rico, it's the end of reason itself.
End of reason itself. But again, the implication behind that is that what they have to say is what is reason. What they have to say is what is true thought that's being silenced and such and such. But again, as I said, it works both ways. We'd use the same terminology if they language. It's co-opting the language. Obviously, you don't know who originated it because they can argue, no, you're co-opting me. No, you're co-opting me. Yada yada yada. But the language is meant the same. Ultimately, somebody's not going to get what they want. Somebody's going to be very unhappy campers, and I'd rather be the happy campers. So I don't much take much stock or concern into their concerns. For me, it's like I know what outcome I want for, and my outcome is the outcomes I want are more closely aligned with these left-wing overzealous asshats than they are any one of you right-wing dipshits. So. You know what I mean?
Bari Weiss is really like the worst messenger for this because
because she has a point there's a point somewhere in there, but it's buried in her fucking personal grievances and beefs.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because it's entirely about her personal grievances and beefs. Like she sets herself up as this like paragon of virtue and reason, but then everyone needs to cancel Linda Sarsour. someone
Yeah.
who has not been convicted of any or even accused of
Yeah,
any crimes.
she can't make a
You know,
case. She can't make the case for these things without bringing her personal hangups and beefs into this, because ultimately she's not as objective as she claims to be. It is about her. This is about her
yeah.
personal beef. She really does.
And she
She's-
has
yeah.
this background canceling Palestinian professors at her school. Even her resignation letter contained like kind of cancel language against like Alice Walker. Like you kind of got to pick a lane, and Bari
You
Weiss
gotta pick
can't
a
quite
lane.
pick a
Are you?
lane.
Yeah, I'm like, are you trying to make an objective case for the good of society, or are you trying to fucking
Yeah.
complain about your personal hangups?
Yeah, that letter that she signed, which by the way, she was apparently instrumental in making sure other people didn't sign it, like Glenn Greenwald, because she had beef with them. Like, so she's canceling people to sign on to the anti-cancel letter. Like, there's a sign that something's wrong. But that letter I was initially supportive of because I knew what they meant, but I realized that by failing to really discuss any particulars, any specific instances of overreach, of canceling, of what she would call illiberalism, she made the letter writers made it all about like the personalities involved, and when your front man is people like Bari Weiss, you've instantly shot yourself in the foot. You know,
Yeah.
it's like how can we not make it about Bari Weiss when you won't discuss any actual specific instances? And that was the flaw.
Exactly. And that's my issue with these types, that ultimately they're too fucking self-centered and self-involved to talk about these things in a way that doesn't revolve around them and their fucking personal issues with other people who've critiqued them or can't quote unquote canceled them or whatever. They can't just speak on these things about what is the objective issue that we should all equally be concerned about, that it affects us all, because again, they can't separate themselves from the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, they've made it so we can't separate their personalities from what I think are real issues. There was a Jacobin article recently. It was called "Trying to Get Workers Fired is the Wrong Way to Fight Racism." Did you happen to read it?
I saw that. I just fucking glanced at it. I did not read it. I just completely skimmed. I was like, whatever.
This is the letter that all those people should have written and signed, because it specifically avoids any kind of like celebrity culture, because this is not an issue about people being mean to J.K. Rowling, a literal billionaire online. That is, and to be fair,
this is a much deeper issue, and I agree. I actually agree with the notion that we shouldn't be getting people fired for the things they say and whatnot. Because especially in this country where losing your job is equivalent to a fucking death sentence. If you're not a fucking multi-millionaire who can fucking live comfortably despite not having a job. Yeah. I know right now, if I got fired for some shit I said, me and my family would be fucked right now. It's bad. Like, it's really fucking bad. So I am 100% in agreement with that. But no, Bari Weiss, James, all those fucking dipshits are not the people to be not the messengers, not be the messengers of others. And you know what? I actually might say a thing on this. Now that you got me inspired.
Yeah, good. Come on, speak up.
Can you send me that letter? I'm gonna put a tweet on it too. I'm gonna do a tweet and a video on it, because I think I really should make that point to y'all. Like, if motherfuckers came after me for some shit I tweeted out and lost my job, you'd effectively be condemning me to poverty and homelessness.
I just put it in the chat. Did you see it?
Thank you. Yeah, no, yeah. I'm like, y'all really shouldn't be jumping at the opportunity to get somebody fired for some shit they say online, because if it can happen to them, it can happen to you, motherfuckers. And if you are, if getting unemployed would basically condemn you to poverty and homelessness, then you don't fucking want this.
Yeah. To be fair to the letter, Thomas Chatterley Williams, who basically wrote the letter, he spoke about his reasons for writing it. It had nothing to do with J.K. Rowling. It had nothing to do with people like that. But the problem is, by not calling attention to working class issues, you let it be defined. Like, J.K. Rowling's one of the most famous people on the planet.
He let his letter get defined by everybody else.
Yeah.
Because he didn't actually relate it to everyone else in a way that they would understand. he left too much to interpretation, and well, here we are.
Eh,
We're just getting just soundly maligned.
Yeah, and so this article, it lists things like a dentist office that fired a bunch of employees. It lists a story that was in social media. I remember it from a few years ago. I'd completely forgotten it, about a Chipotle manager who kicked people out because they had dined and dashed before, and she was like blown up on social media, and the corporate office fired her without ever looking at, a working woman who's just has a very blue collar job, managing a Chipotle, and she has the might of first social media, and then the Chipotle, which I'm sure they're owned by like a big parent company, corporate office, like coming down on her. Like these are comrades we need to be protecting, and
Yeah.
cancel culture is absolutely an affront to that. We need Noam Chomsky and J.K. Rowling and all the rest to sign on to an art to a letter like this article.
They could never do it because J.K.
No,
Rowling
Noam Chomsky would. Noam Chomsky would.
Noam Chomsky would, but J.K. Rowling and the types couldn't do it because, again, it's all about them. They can't separate themselves from this shit to care about how it actually affects other people.
Yeah. I agree.
But hey, I actually got to bounce real soon.
Yeah,
if you got any closing thoughts and such you want to talk about before we go?
No, just that I appreciate you coming by to talk to me, and I thought it was a really great conversation. Thanks.
Absolutely. No, it's this is good, and I told you, believe me, we're on the same page. I can promise you that much.
Yeah. Thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Not a problem. You too. Have a good night.